Episode 3. Blood in the Gulch. The Nevada desert sprawled beneath a vast silver-blue moonlit sky, its endless dunes stretching toward a horizon that seemed to swallow the stars. The narrow gulch, a jagged scar carved into the earth, stood as a silent sentinel, its steep walls rising like the teeth of some ancient beast. The air was thick with the scent of dry sand and the faint temps of blood, a prelude to the storm about to break. Jacob Kane stood atop a rocky ledge, his weathered boots gripping the stone, Winchester rifle steady in his calloused hands. The barrel was still warm from his last shot, a faint wisp of smoke curling upward, blending with the cool night breeze. Below, the sand was stained a deep crimson where a cloaked mercenary lay sprawled, his black stallion rearing in panicked. Circles its hooves kicking up golden dust that caught the moonlight. The man's lifeless eyes stared upward, a testament to the battle that had only just begun. Jacob's heart pounded. Not with the paralyzing fear he'd known in his darkest days, but with the old, familiar thrill of a fight he couldn't escape. His silver-streaked black hair whipped in the wind, framing a face etched with scars and the weight of 10 years' solitude. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the gulch, taking in the chaos unfolding. From one end, Ward's riders charged, their silhouettes jagged against the dunes, rifles blazing with flashes of orange fire. From the other, the shadowy figures of the unknown mercenaries advanced, their movements precise, their cloaks billowing like dark wings. Caught between two relentless forces, Jacob felt the weight of his past decisions pressing down, a burden he'd carried since the night Clara and Lily were taken from him. But tonight, that burden was shared with Nita, with the Navajo women. With a fight that might finally give him purpose, Nita crouched beside him, her presence a steadying force amid the storm. Her traditional dress, once vibrant with Navajo patterns, was now torn and streaked with dust and blood, the fabric clinging to her lithe frame. A fresh cut on her arm oozed red, the blood mixing with the grime on her skin. But her dark eyes burned with a fire that refused to dim. She gripped her dagger, its blade glinting like a shard of moonlight, her knuckles white with determination. For a fleeting moment, their eyes met a spark of trust, a silent promise that transcended the gunfire and the blood-soaked sand. "We hold them here," she said, her voice cutting through the wind like a blade, firm and resolute. "The gulch is our wall?" Jacob nodded, his gaze shifting to the women below. Shima, the elder with silver-streaked hair, stood with her small bow drawn. An arrow knocked and trembling slightly as her aged hands held steady. Her face, lined with the wisdom of countless battles, was a mask of calm amid the chaos. Hawi, the young girl, barely 16, clung to her newborn, her arms trembling, but her eyes wide with a resolve that belied her years. Tala and Kiona flanked the group, their daggers poised like extensions of their will, their movements fluid and predatory. The scout, bound and gagged with a leather strap, knelt near a rock, his eyes darting with fear as the battle closed in, its earlier defiance replaced by the stark reality of his fate. The first shot rang out, a sharp crack that echoed off the gulch's towering walls, reverberating like a thunderclap. Chaos erupted in its wake. A ward rider fell, his horse screaming as it stumbled, its legs buckling under the weight of its dying master. The sound, a haunting wail that pierced the night. But the respite was brief. Mercenary's bullet whizzed past Jacob's head, the air singing as it chipped a shard of stone from the ledge, the fragment skittering down to the sand below. Jacob ducked, his reflexes honed by years of bounty hunting, and fired back, his aim true. The shot boomed, the muzzle flash illuminating his clenched jaw. The mercenary dropped, a spray of blood painting the sand in vivid crimson. Nita leapt down from the ledge with the grace of a panther, her dagger flashing as she met a cloaked figure head-on. The mercenary swung a curved sword, the blade whistling through the air. But Nita sidestepped, her dagger sinking into his side with a sickening thud that echoed in Jacob's ears. The man grunted, his knees buckling as he collapsed, his cloak pooling around him like spilled ink. But another was on her, his sword arcing toward her neck. Jacob swung his rifle like a club, the stock connecting with the attacker's head with a dull crack, sending him sprawling. Their eyes locked again, hers filled with gratitude, his with a resolve that burned hotter than the gunfire, and then they turned to the next threat. Their movements synchronized in the heat of battle. Shima's arrow found its mark, piercing a rider's chest with a soft whistle. The fletching quivering as the man toppled from his saddle, his cry lost in the din. Tala and Kiona moved like shadows, their daggers dancing in the moonlight, taking down two mercenaries in swift, silent strikes. Tala's blade sliced across a throat, blood spurting in a fine mist. While Kiona drove hers into a chest, the man's gasp cut short as he fell. But the numbers were against them. Wardsmen, led by a burly figure with a scarred face and a wide-brimmed hat, pushed forward, their rifles blazing. A bullet grazed Jacob's shoulder, a hot sting followed by the warm seep of blood through his shirt, but he gritted his teeth, returning fire with precision. Each shot a calculated strike against the tide. Who are these others? Jacob shouted over the gunfire, ducking as another bullet ricocheted off the rock, sending sparks flying. His voice was rough, strained by the smoke and the weight of the fight. Nita parried a sword thrust, her breath ragged as she twisted away, her dagger flashing in a counter-strike that drew a line of red across her opponent's arm. Hired by Ward's masters, railroad tycoons, senators, she gasped, her voice steady despite the pain. They want the ledger erased, not just the gold. The mention of the ledger fueled Jacob's determination, a fire stoked by the thought of justice long denied. A document listing Ward's crimes, massacres, burned villages, the slaughter of women and children to clear land for powerful menwise, a weapon greater than gold. His eyes scanned the battlefield, spotting the burly rider Ward himself, his cold eyes glinting under the hat, a sneer curling his scarred lips. Ward. Jacob roared, aiming his rifle, but a mercenary tackled him, the impact sending the weapon skittering across the ledge. Jacob hit the ground hard, the breath knocked from his lungs, his vision blurring with rage. Nita lunged, her dagger slashing the mercenary's arm, the blade biting deep enough to make him howl and release Jacob. He scrambled for his rifle, fingers closing around the stock as he rose, but Ward fired, the bullet tearing through Nita's leg. She stumbled, a gasp escaping her lips, her knee buckling as blood pooled beneath her. Jacob's vision reddened, a primal fury surging through him. He squeezed the trigger, the shot booming like a cannon, striking Ward's horse. The animal collapsed with a shrill neigh, pinning Ward beneath its bulk, his curses muffled by the sand as he struggled futilely. The mercenaries faltered, their leaders fall a blow to their morale. But the tide turned as more riders appeared, Ward's reinforcements, their silhouettes dark against the moonlit dunes. Jacob pulled Nita behind a boulder, her weight against him sending a jolt through his chest, her warmth a stark contrast to the cold steel of his rifle. "We can't hold," he said, his voice rough with exertion and concern. "We need to find that ledger." Nita nodded, pain etching lines across her face as she clutched her leg. "Lila has it. She's hiding in the canyon 3 days' ride. If we survive, we go." The scout, overhearing, struggled against his bonds, his gag slipping enough to let words spill out. "You'll never make it," he spat, his voice hoarse. "Ward's got trackers. Those others they'll kill for that ledger." Jacob glared at him, then turned to the women. "Shima, Tala, Kiona, cover us. Owie, stay low." He helped Nita stand, her arm wrapping around his shoulder, their bodies pressed close in the narrow space. The contact stirred something deep. Within him, warmth, connection, a flicker of the man he'd been before loss consumed him. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the pass ahead, but her presence lingered, a beacon in the darkness. They fought their way to the Gulch's far end, arrows and bullets flying like a deadly rain. Shima's bow sang, each shot a deadly melody that felled a rider, her hands steady despite the trembling of her years. With ruthless efficiency, their daggers flashing in the moonlight, blood staining the sand with each strike. Awee's soft sobs for her baby mixed with the clash of metal, a haunting soundtrack to their retreat, her young voice a fragile thread. In the chaos, as they reached a narrow pass, the gunfire slowed, the enemy regrouping. But a new sound emerged, a low rumble, like thunder rolling closer, vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. Flash flood, Nita whispered, her eyes widening with dread. The gulch, dry and silent moments ago, now trembled as water surged from the canyon. A wall of muddy brown and white foam barreling toward them with unstoppable force. The sound grew to a roar, a primal force of nature that dwarfed the gunfire, its approach a death knell for those below. "Run!" Jacob shouted, half carrying Nita as they scrambled up a rocky incline, their boots slipping on loose gravel. The women followed, Shima pulling a wee with a strength born of desperation, the baby's cries lost in the torrent's roar. The water crashed below, a relentless wave that swept away bodies and horses, the sand turning to a churning mire. Ward's screams were cut short as the flood claimed him, his pinned form vanishing beneath the muddy depths, a final curse swallowed by the deluge. They collapsed on higher ground, breathless, the gulch now a raging river that glittered under the moonlight. Nita leaned against Jacob, her hand gripping his arm, their breaths sinking in the aftermath, a rhythm that spoke of survival and something more. "We're alive," she murmured, a faint smile breaking through her pain, her eyes reflecting the stars above. Jacob looked at her, the moonlight softening her features, tracing the lines of her face with a tenderness he hadn't felt in years. Her hand on his arm was warm, a lifeline in the cold night. And he felt a pull connection that transcended the battle, a promise of something yet to come. "For now," he said, his voice low, rough with emotion. "But we're not done." It's episode 3 end. Flood of Fate episode 3 thrusts Jacob and Nita into a brutal gulch battle. With Ward's death and a flash flood shifting the odds, who sent the mercenaries? And can they reach Leela's canyon? Will love ignite amid the bloodshed? Tune in for episode 4 to uncover the Ledger's secrets. If you're captivated by this saga, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to catch every thrilling moment. Share your thoughts on Ward's fate in the comments below.